Hello. I'm going to read out most of an article called "A Message to the Predator of Opus Dei" from me and Blondie. One way or another, I'm going to get you. This is a long video. I'm sorry, but hopefully one of the last. Um, if all goes well in my libel case this week, please read patiently or listen to the end to see what brought me to this. Think of that song, okay? And I hope in particular that it's watched or listened or read by ex-domestic servants of Opus Dei, as a lot of it relates to them. Okay, I'm going to do a Spanish version too. So even though I was a numerary of Opus Dei, in my opinion, that's not my best credential for being an ally of abused ex and current domestic servants of Opus Dei. So I'm going to suggest later that my best credential is being orphaned at birth for 6 months for Catholic moral reasons, no other reasons, and my advocacy for adoptees in England. So we have shared Opus Dei experience, um, which is helpful because I understand the deception of Opus Dei from the inside, and we had a similar load of spiritual burdens to all other members of Opus Dei. Though the men don't do domestic work in the centres, the women do. The women numeraries do, and they have extra physical mortifications like sleeping on boards on the floor. And I'll come on to assistant numeraries later. So I was fortunate. I was a really useless numerary. I didn't recruit anyone. I wasn't on a local council, not even of Opus Dei, not even for an annual course. I tried to groom one person, a fellow lawyer, though thank God I didn't get very far. Um, I heard the chats of two married members of Opus Dei for a few months at most. So that guy wasn't a child when I tried to groom him. He wasn't involved in Opus Dei as a child. I heard the chats of two married members of Opus Dei for a few months at most. One was English. He was troubled, and I vividly remember his pained reaction when I once gave him a stupid piece of advice. I hope he's okay, and that one day he'll be willing to let me say sorry to him. And also the other guy that I mentioned, the one I tried to groom. Um, so they're the only times I can remember hurting anyone in the 9 years of Opus Dei. I may have forgotten other times, and I'm open to challenge. But at the moment, I don't. I've searched my heart. I can't think of any anymore. Anyway, the rest of my experience of Opus Dei was painful and lonely. But what I don't have experience of in Opus Dei is the devastating physical exploitation of the domestic servants, driven to exhaustion with 12 hours a day of hard domestic labour, often 7 days a week. This is domestic slavery. They also had no freedom to see friends and family outside the centre. They were deprived of TV and many of the home comforts they themselves provided to the male numeraries. They ate worse food and slept in worse bedrooms. So my only connection to demanding domestic work is that sometime after I left Opus Dei, I collapsed psychologically, in part due to my Opus Dei abuse. And I've got an expert medical report that says that. I then left the practice of the law and I stayed in a Christian rehab centre for 3 years doing farm and catering work. Then I got a paid job as a pot wash in a hotel. That's a kind of plate washer. Um, in a hotel kitchen in the Cotswolds in England. I worked there for a year, often washing dishes 12 hours a day, especially if we had wedding parties. I also did vegetable preparation, and in the end, I could run a whole breakfast shift. My head chef was ex-army and a bully, so in the end, he sacked me. When I became a dad, my greatest joy, I played a full part in changing nappies, housework, childcare. So that's my connection with hard physical work. Okay, a little part of my life. So that's given me some empathy. Okay, and I know it's just a tiny bit. All right. My adoption story. My adoption experience is maybe hard for non-adoptees to connect with. I was born outside marriage in 1972 to British Irish Catholic families based in London. My birth parents were not compatible. Their engagement broke down. My maternal grandmother insisted on adoption via the Crusade of Rescue, now called the Catholic Children's Society, in London. The social stigma around unmarried mothers was still strong, thanks to the Catholic Church and other churches. The Crusade of Rescue was the adoption agency that the Catholic Church set up to give opportunities for babies like me to be placed with married Catholic couples. I was an orphan for 6 months, and unfortunately, the crusade of rescue placed me with a Scottish couple who had moved to London and hid their alcohol dependency long enough to get through the checks and adopt me and then my sister, who is 100% Irish. My earliest memories are of being stuck between them as their marriage disintegrated. They stopped going to Mass but made us go. We walked a mile along a busy London road to the nearest Catholic church and back again. There was no way the crusade could check because the adoption law did not allow it. A few years later, the UK government took infant adoptions out of the hands of churches and substantially ended the practice. Outrageously, the practice of infant adoption goes on to this day in the USA. Adoptee trauma. Getting in touch with my adoptee trauma has been huge. Like many adoptees, I grew up without affinity with my adoptive parents and felt out of place in society. I always had to work out how to belong, how to act normal, but it seemed an impossible task. But I was academic, and the Catholic Church and its doctrines made sense to me. There was an emphasis on sin, and I always felt deeply bad about myself. But there was redemption, the rituals and the beliefs, and some sense of belonging to a spiritual group that could never throw me out. What I understand now is that my orphan experience massively stunted the development of the parts of my brain that are responsible for emotional attachment and regulation. 6 months without a mum from birth is enough for that damage to be permanent. Though love can heal, not only did I lose my world on the day of my birth, I may have lost for life the neurological ability in my head to grieve that loss normally. That's common. So my advocacy for English ex-Catholic adoptees. I'm going to meet the head of the Catholic Children's Society next week. I don't know if he's an adoptee, but telling my story to non-adoptees can produce an emotional reaction in them that I myself cannot produce because of the damage of adoption. But seeing their tears helps. I'm also asking him to advocate to the Cardinal in England to start the process of acknowledging to all adoptees placed by the Crusade of Rescue and other Catholic agencies the devastating psychological effects of infant adoption on them. So far, the person I'm going to meet has indicated that he holds little sway in the Catholic Church, and so I should expect nothing. So I'm not going away. But that's a legacy campaign, but the Opus Dei one is an urgent one where people are still trapped. Working with vulnerable children. I also have agreed with my family to spend 3 months in an orphanage in Latin America from this April. Thinking about those children, who I don't know yet, makes me cry. I know it will be healing for me and help prepare me for school teaching, and I have a university place for that in September, or working with vulnerable English children. When I was hired as a teaching assistant last year, I was asked about my safeguarding experience, and obviously I don't want any skeletons remaining in my closet. I hope the Opus Dei campaign is over by April, and everyone who is hurting is well taken care of by professionals without access to grind or without who haven't been compromised. But I have my doubts, and I'm prepared to abandon my plans for Latin America and even for teaching or other work if others don't step up to the plate to help me. Healing from Opus Dei with love and porn. So bear with me on this. My son's not going to see this, I promise you. For my healing, I also hope that one day I'll have a loving relationship with a woman. Brittany, you didn't reply to my Valentine message. Anyway, a loving relationship can really start me up, in the words of Mick Jagger. The love of my son has helped me a lot in recent years. He's been very beautifully nurtured and is very secure in himself, and helps me see the difference between the childhood of an adoptee and of a natural child. And Christians and Catholics here might be surprised to hear that God guided me to use porn, but without shame. And I can honestly recommend this to incels like me, involuntary celibates. I don't need it right now, as I have reached a place of healing and confidence thanks to that, and also thanks to emotion-based therapeutic techniques I learnt over the years at great personal and financial cost. Anyway, I pay tribute to Jack Valero and his brothers in Opus Dei for creating the right conditions for me to use porn addictively throughout my 9 years in Opus Dei in Britain. At least I wasn't addicted to smoking or drinking. So this is my plea to ex-domestic servants of Opus Dei. I want to argue I can be an effective advocate for them, along with others, for the following reasons, in descending order. I suffered great manipulation and lifelong psychological damage at the hands of the Catholic Church when I was orphaned at birth and placed with alcoholic adopters. Two, I share with you, to some extent, the manipulation and huge psychological damage from abusive Opus Dei practices for 9 years. Three, I'm an ex-lawyer and have not been afraid to get legal in this fight and go public as well. So I'll put in the article um, a link to a summary of my campaigning articles, my campaigning actions. Four, I made direct accusations online relating to a Spanish billionaire married member of Opus Dei, Miguel Arrufat Pujol, who is the controller of Proeduca and Fundación Parentes, which is the worldwide association of Opus Dei schools, including St Bede's College in Manchester and Fidelis College in London. I accused him of controlling schools that employ Opus Dei priests to groom children for commitments to Opus Dei and or to suppress their sexuality, including under cover of the confessional, which is a safeguarding void even in modern Britain. Those priests were themselves recruited by Opus Dei manipulatively as teens. Six, I repeated those accusations in sealed hand-delivered letters to head teachers of some schools near Fidelis College in London. I haven't got to Manchester yet. Seven, I have reported these accusations to the police in England, and investigations are underway. Eight, in response, Mr. Arrufat Pujol's lawyer, Terence Walsh of Walsh Solicitors, Stockport, has accused me of defamation and harassment. Mr. Walsh and his firm claim no expertise in defamation law. As a former English litigation lawyer myself, Law Society 193484, I can see numerous problems with his letters to me. I have complained to his firm about his conduct. Mr. Walsh acts for other Opus Dei individuals in England on personal injury matters. I wonder what due diligence Mr. Arrufat Pujol did before hiring Mr. Walsh. 9. I have told Mr. Walsh that I will defend this matter in court if necessary, and use that opportunity to publicise all the efforts I have made in vain to secure accountability for Opus Dei abuses in the Catholic Church and beyond, and I'll do a separate video on that a bit later. 10. I have now hired specialist defamation lawyers in the Manchester area in the hope that it will lead to a swift round-table meeting with Mr. Arrufat Pujol in a spirit of Christian reconciliation, love and truth. I hope that appears one day in Opus Dei. 11. In this court action, I will ensure that the interests of ex-domestic servants are front and centre, though it would help to have some communication. I do have some communication, but the more people, the better. 12. If Mr. Arrufat Pujol withdraws his defamation case, I will double down and publicise to a wider audience in Manchester and London my allegations of grooming and his lawyer's response, which clearly does not take issue with those allegations. 13. I have forgiven those in Opus Dei who hurt me and my family for everything. I'm not driven by my own hurt anymore. So, just a final plea to Brittany, where are you? You haven't responded. Anyway, the song I've posted is from Blondie, One Way or Another. And Debbie Harry of Blondie is a fellow adoptee. And I'd love to meet her or a German singer called Roland Kaiser, who's an adoptee. I'd love to meet them one day. They're legends. So thank you very much for listening to my very long video.